Добрый день, уважаемые коллеги. Спасибо большое, что подключились к нашей конференции. Мы очень рады, что темы библиотечных процессов являются настолько актуальными. Мы также надеемся, что эти 2 дня пройдут очень продуктивно и сможем обсудить различные кейсы, примеры и вопросы, и задачи, связанные с научными библиотеками. Как модератор хотела сказать озвучить моментов. Первое, значит, с программой вы можете сверяться на указанном сайте. Я сейчас еще раз отправлю всем ссылку. То есть вся информация актуальна будет именно там. Второе, просим всех участников, кто не говорит, не выступает, сидеть с выключенными микрофонами. Будет возможность задавать вопросы как и в чате, так и после выступления спикеров. Для того, чтобы слушать наших зарубежных коллег на русском языке, необходимо вам будет выбрать канал. То есть вы внизу можете увидеть значок глобуса, там необходимо будет выбрать канал, на котором вы хотите слушать презентации. Dear colleagues, I see that we already are joined by our international guests. Welcome. Thank you so much for supporting our conference, for supporting this agenda of developing academic libraries across the globe. If you have any questions at the moment for me, please voice them. If not, then I would like to pass on now the word to our very first speaker. It's Марк Мэтсон, руководитель инициативы по глобальному взаимодействию библиотек и международному партнерству Университета штата Пенсильвания, США. Вот, передаю слово Марку Мэтсону для того, чтобы послушать его на тему академических библиотек и интернационализации высшего образования. Mark, are you with us?
Yes, I am. Thank you very much.
Okay. Super. Thank you again so much, Mark. So the floor is yours.
I will just share my screen.
Yes, please. Okay, super.
Does that work?
Yep, we can see it perfectly.
Great. Esteemed colleagues, it is truly an honor to have the opportunity to speak with you today about Penn State's experience in establishing a global engagement program in an academic library in support of our university's internationalization goals. Given our time constraints, I will not be able to go into all of our initiatives, but I have provided my contact information, and I would be more than happy to speak with you further after the presentation. To begin, I do feel it is important to provide a little bit of context about our university and our libraries. I'm not going to read through all of the stats here, but Penn State is a very large university. We do have 24 campuses across the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania, and we do have close to 100,000 students at all of our campuses and within our online program. And we are home of over 30,000 full-time employees of the university. Similar to our large university, the Penn State libraries are also a large organization. We are 36 libraries across the Commonwealth at each of our campuses, including also our subject libraries. But we function as one library, geographically dispersed. We are essentially one library. And we do have somewhere around 550 total full-time equivalent positions within the libraries. So all that we do in global engagement initiatives is thanks to the work of all of our Penn State colleagues in the libraries. Penn State is also a very global university. We have a large number of international students and visiting scholars. They come from more than 100 different countries. And we're ranked as a top producer of both faculty and student Fulbright recipients and in the top US institutions and sending students abroad for study abroad. In 2019, we did receive the Gold Award for Leadership and Pervasiveness in Global Learning, Research and Engagement from the APLU, and the library's Global Engagement Initiative was actually featured in the nomination for that award. So we are contributing to our overall university internationalization. So why do we start a global engagement program in the Penn State Libraries? Well, it all comes down to the university's strategic priorities, which you can see have a strong focus on global engagement and internationalization. All of the following initiatives are informed by Penn State Libraries and the Penn State University's strategic plan. So in establishing a new project and a new initiative in global engagement, our first step was a review of the globally focused initiatives at Penn State to develop a sort of institutional map of internationalization efforts. And we looked at formal academic programs. These could be things like our degree programs in international affairs. And we looked at other kinds of things like university-wide initiatives, like the Global Studies Center. And not only did we look at university-level initiatives that are already established, we also looked at international student associations and groups, and then current and past libraries initiatives, whether they were done at a library-wide scale or if they were just one particular campus. And after doing this review, we were then able to establish a pilot for our initiatives. And I look at them as a two-faceted program, one that is focused at the Penn State specific areas of focus, and then one that is looking outward at the rest of the world. And I'll go through these in the following slides. So the first area of focus for us is the outreach and services to international populations. What you're seeing here is a graphic we developed in the libraries that is displayed on all of our digital signage. And the idea behind it was just to provide an open and welcoming atmosphere for international colleagues, students, and visiting scholars as they entered the library. We didn't just develop our services and programs for international students by ourselves, but we did want to get a lot of the data that we needed in order to decide what would be helpful. Part of the data we were able to get from the Ithaca S&R survey of undergraduates that our university runs, and as well as our own targeted international student focus groups and interviews with library staff. And there was a lot of good information in these surveys. We did find things that we were doing well. International students had a high view of the library and felt at home there. And we also saw things that were challenges for us, like using library jargon and it being particularly confusing for international students. So armed with this data, we were able then to develop a program of services for international students. Some of these I'm going to list here, and I'll just give a brief overview. We did start an international student personal librarian program. This was specifically for international students, and it is in addition to our normal online and in-person reference services. This is run by our international student liaison librarians at our different campuses, and international students can sign up to have a personal librarian that they can meet with and work with throughout the semester in research projects, finding and evaluating resources, using citations, all of the skills that are needed for success in academics. We also created a new welcome guide for international students that is on the Penn State Library's webpage that explains how academic libraries in the US work. We also had set up an international student oral history project through our university archives that documents and records our international student experiences so that we're making sure that those voices are heard in the future. And we're also going back to our international student alums that were at Penn State maybe 30 years ago to get their experiences recorded as well. We are doing outreach to international student associations. So those might be groups like the Chinese Undergraduate Student Association or the Brazilian Student Association, and telling them about our services and our resources for them. We also are doing quite a bit of international student programming and orientations. We've done things like international student lunch chats, international book clubs, and we even have partnered with our university athletics department to host an international student appreciation night at the men's basketball games in the winter break. And like I showed earlier, we also have done quite a bit in terms of signage and visibility and hanging international flags from countries where students come from in our spaces, having international board games on hand, and prominently featuring international newspapers in our collection. Here's a screenshot of our international student personal librarian program that is run through our Canvas course module. The next area I'd like to focus on is promoting global citizenship and learning across the university. We do have globally focused outreach and learning events. Things that we do in this area are things like film screenings or film festivals, discussion groups where we will focus on a certain topic from a different global perspective. We've done things like our many faces of intercultural dialogue, where we showcase international and domestic student collaboration in conversation partner programs. And we've done a lot of work with International Education Week, where we've focused on things like how to market your international experience for jobs. We've also done globally focused exhibits. We, in the last couple of years, put together a academic libraries across the world exhibit where we examined some of the differences and similarities between academic libraries in different global contexts. We've done some internationalization of our collections. One area that would be a good example is in our leisure viewing collection. These are popular films that students can use for leisure. And we have devoted a significant amount of that budget to purchasing international films, which provides international students with a sense of belonging, seeing their culture represented, but it also provides an opportunity for domestic students, faculty, and staff to have exposure to other cultures as well. And then we also have been doing some work with supporting the internationalization of the curriculum at the university, working with a program that is focused on joining up different classrooms across different universities internationally and providing support that way. Here are some shots of different events that we've held in our spaces. As an example, DocUnite there is a film series that we ran in collaboration with the Iranian Student Association on campus. This is a picture I took of our academic libraries around the world exhibit that we had running. And we had brought that from a couple of different campuses. And then the last one in this area that I want to talk about is our international development for ourselves, the Penn State Library's faculty, staff at the university. So we've done a lot of work to make sure that we are also working on our international and global competency. We've done things like international name pronunciation workshops for the largest student groups. So we did one on how to pronounce common Chinese names, how to pronounce common Indian names, so that our faculty and staff might be a little bit more confident in pronouncing those names, and the students would be feeling more welcome in our spaces, having their names pronounced correctly. We also have an international film discussion group for libraries employees, and we do professional development workshops. So we've done things like working with international patrons, understanding cultural differences, and those kinds of programs. And then we've also started an international colleague partnership program, and I'm going to talk a little bit about that now in the next slide. So in discussing international partnerships, we can now turn to the more outward-facing areas of focus for the Penn State Library's global engagement initiatives. Sorry. This is a collage of some shots that I've taken from different visits, both to Penn State and to our partners. And we currently have 7 international partner libraries. And these are all within Penn State's Global Engagement Network, which are special partnerships that the university has at a university level. That means that we work underneath the agreements that the university signs with the partner university, and the libraries work within those partnerships. In these partnerships, what we are looking for is that they are flexible, they're based on common interests, and they are supportive of the wider partnership or the larger institutional partnership that we're supporting the research and teaching and learning agendas of that larger partnership. Some of the things that we're doing within those international partnerships are things like no fee interlibrary loan of electronic materials. That is something that was very popular with our faculty, that because we are not able to share access to our databases, because we are not a consortium, this is our answer to being able to share resources across the partnerships. So we don't charge any fees for our interlibrary loan between our partners. They don't charge us any fees, and that allows us to have access to more materials. We do share knowledge and practices. We've had discussions around systematic reviews, conservation and preservation of materials, library-based instruction, and a whole host of other areas. We've also done some work in joint research and publications. There's currently a group with one of our partners that is researching librarian education in the 2 different countries, how they are different, how they are the same. We've done faculty and staff exchanges. We've put together funding to be able to facilitate those exchanges across our partnerships. And we've done some joint programming. We have currently a group with one of our partners that is looking at data management and data concierge services for our universities, and then also for the collaborative research that is being done by our universities. We also have done some online programs. This last summer, we did a fun project with one of our partners, and we held the Monash Penn State Great Rare Books Bake Off, which was an online social media program that encouraged our communities to bake recipes from our collections, our historical collections. And then the university that had the most participants won the friendly competition. We've also exchanged local materials and displays. The display that I showed earlier had materials from some of our partner libraries that had sent materials for that exhibit. And we also are helping each other build our reputations and engagement in each other's countries. We've shared professional development opportunities by streaming our different professional development programs. And we're currently exploring joint exhibits that would be at both universities. And we're helping to broaden the views of the library profession amongst our employees. So we're starting to look at setting up like kind of a library pen pal program as well, that people with similar types of positions would be able to discuss their work. And finally, the last area of focus is participation in a global library community. And we're doing this in a host of ways. One is hosting international visiting scholar librarians at our university. In the last couple of years, we have hosted a librarian from Brazil and a librarian from Jordan. And they have acted as visiting scholars within the libraries, providing us with their perspectives on library work in the university, and letting us share our experiences with them as well. We've also started to try to encourage more participation in international governing bodies like the International Federation of Library Associations, and hope to become much more of an active participant there, like we are in the American Library Association. And then also in contributing to the scholarly conversation around international librarianship through research, conference participation, like I'm doing now, and publishing. We are pretty unique in having a global engagement initiatives department.
Many other joint initiatives. Уважаемые коллеги, какие будут вопросы к Марку? Mark, actually, I had a question. How does the no-fee interlibrary loan work exactly? Like, what type of materials do you usually share?
Yeah, so this happens kind of outside of our normal system. And because we only have currently 7 international partners, we're able to do that outside of our normal system. At this time, we are only doing electronic materials. So mostly these are articles that we are sending electronically. We have thought about doing other materials, physical materials as well, but we haven't quite gotten there yet. The reason that this started, besides getting access to a lot of materials that we might not normally have access to, is because the first thing that researchers asked me when we started this program was, when will we have access to all of our partners' databases, and when will they have access to all of our materials? And I had to say, hold on, that is a big ask, but we can start with making interlibrary loan between our libraries easier. So it gets us part of the way there. It's not the full answer, but it is a good service that we are able to provide. And it doesn't matter how large or small your university is, because some of our partners are much smaller than us, but they have access to networks in parts of the world that we don't have access to. And when we are looking for materials from those areas, we oftentimes have a hard time getting those materials through interlibrary loan and our normal colleagues. So having an additional resource in a certain region of the world is incredibly useful for interlibrary loan.
Thank you very much, Mark. We have actually a question from one of our participants, the director of the library in Kazakh Russian Medical University. She's asking, how was your library's activity organized during the pandemic period?
Yeah, so like everyone else, we scrambled early on to make things work and accessible. I guess I could talk maybe more eloquently about what we're doing in international space, but overall, we were quite quick to adapt to the COVID situation. It was a lot of work, and my colleagues did an amazing job in getting resources online and switching things over. We were able to allow access to a lot of things through our emergency HathiTrust access that allowed us to kind of move things online. And in terms of instruction and reference, we pivoted quickly to online learning because we had already been in that space quite a bit. We also have a librarian at Penn State who is an online learning librarian. So she has been working in this space for a long time, and she was actually one of the people who was picked to serve on one of the university's transition committees. There was like a couple of different committees that were set up across the university, and she was one of those folks that was pulled in to say, how can we transition our entire university of 100,000 students to online in a week? Because we did it over our spring break. So students left for spring break, and then they just didn't come back. And in that amount of time, the university was able to pivot, and the libraries along with them were able to pivot to pretty much fully remote until sometime in the summer, when we did start to do some physical lending again.
Thank you very much, Mark. We have a few more questions. So one from Gulzar Nurjanova, who's actually the president of the Association of Academic Libraries of Kazakhstan. She's asking, how does this process of exchange happen between the librarians of different countries, the program that you mentioned? Could Kazakhstani librarians also participate?
So the way that we have been, there's two different ones that I've talked about. So one is through our Penn State Global Engagement Network, which is just a Penn State thing. We've signed agreements with certain institutions across the world, and we are using our own funds to facilitate short-term exchanges, short-term visits with our partners. And again, those partners, those 7 partners, are underneath Penn State's Global Engagement Network. So that's one way that we've been doing it. And we don't have the kind of money to facilitate, an academic semester-long visit yet. Maybe someday we'll get there. But usually these are a week or two visits back and forth. The second way that we have done international visiting scholars, which could be open to folks in Kazakhstan, is through things like Fulbright or Humphrey Fellowships. That is going through programs that the libraries, Penn State libraries, aren't paying necessarily for, and the international visiting scholar isn't having to pay for. And those are the ways that we have done those visiting scholars. My dream would be to develop an internal Penn State visiting scholar program where we would be able to host yearly an international visiting scholar in our libraries. But again, that's quite a ways in the distance, and currently we have to focus on international visiting scholars that are able to secure funding that's coming from somewhere else.
Thank you very much, Mark. One more question from Olga Zaitseva. She's asking, could you please name some of the research projects that you mentioned that you conduct together with other libraries?
Yeah, so I can expand on the two that I mentioned. So the one is some of my colleagues here at Penn State who are focused on on library education as a research interest, and some of our colleagues at the University of Split in Croatia. We're talking a little bit about how libraries, librarians are prepared for their work, and then once they're on the job, what does professional development look like? What does learning beyond that degree look like in each country? And the systems are vastly different in the way that librarianship is seen and is kind of regulated at the different levels of regulation. And so when they were looking at that and discussing it, they thought that this would be a really good kind of comparative study of what we can learn by comparing our two systems. And you can't really compare a system that you are immersed in until you see how different it can be elsewhere. And I don't know if we have time. I know we're getting close, but if you wanted to, I could talk a little bit more about that data research management side too.
Thank you very much, Mark. Уважаемые коллеги, есть ли еще вопросы к нашему гостю? But Mark, you mentioned that we could possibly relay and forward some questions to you later on as well, right?
Yes, I'd be more than happy to speak with anybody. Feel free to send me a message on Twitter or an email, and I'd be happy to set up a conversation for us. And I'll put my information in the chat here as well.
Марк поделился своими контактами, поэтому, уважаемые коллеги, если у вас будут какие-то уточняющие вопросы к нему, то, пожалуйста, пишите. Mark, thank you so much for your participation. It was very important for us to have Penn State as one of our strategic partners. So we thank you for your expertise, and that we hope that you can, I know it's late time in the US, but you can stay maybe a little bit longer also to participate in the conference.
Yes, thank you so much. Again, it has been truly an honor, and I would not miss Peter's talk. I'll definitely stay on for that.
Okay, thank you, Mark. Я поблагодарила, уважаемые коллеги, Марка Мэтсона. Penn State является стратегическим партнером университета Нархоз, поэтому для нас очень важна их экспертиза.